Hi, I'm Clay Allison from Wicked Edge. I've got another great knife here sent in by Adam Weaver. This is a Shun Nakiri. It's one of the Pro 2 series knives. Beautiful blade, made of VG10 steel. I did a lot of research when I got this knife to make sure I understood all the geometry and how it was created so that I could sharpen it properly. And what I found out is that they generally have an 11-degree primary bevel. I don't know if you can see it in the film here, but it's this great big face from my fingertip to the edge of the knife there. It's one big long bevel at 11 degrees. And then I noticed when I picked the knife up that it had also a little tiny primary bevel, which I wondered about. And so I called Adam back and I asked him if he had sharpened it at any point, and he said no, he had never sharpened it. So that inspired a whole bunch of research, and I went online into Shun's own website and found that they put a 16-degree bevel on their edges right at the very last bit. It's just a little tiny micro bevel. I also noticed what looked like a tiny micro bevel on the back side of this knife. If you look at it, you'll see it's really only ground on one side, and then the back side there shouldn't be any bevel at all. But on further inspection, it's slightly concave here, which allows you to lay a stone on the spine and the edge and get to 0 degrees, and it just makes it, it's intentional design. It makes it very easy to deburr the backside of the knife once you've worked on the primary bevel. So what I said about doing with this knife was to match the 11-degree bevel and work that into a nice polish all the way down to the edge, and then put on a tiny little 16-degree micro bevel, and then I went backwards again, just stepping down 1 degree at a time back to 11 degrees to really blend that micro bevel back into the main bevel so that it's almost invisible. If you look under a magnifying glass you can see it, but for the most part it's just a nice continuous, very, very slight curve. The other thing I found is that it's a hand-forged knife, and that plane is not totally flat. There's little waves and undulations, and so there's places where it was a challenge to get in and polish those little concave sections, and that the actual bevel varied anywhere from 10 to 11 degrees, and I was using an angle cube to measure the differences and all the slight variations. And I think that's one of the beauties of a handmade knife, is that it's got its own character, and it's fun to be able to work with that and reveal the hands of the maker of the knife. So anyway, to get started on sharpening it, I go ahead and put the depth key into the clamp, and I slide the knife in like this, rest it on both prongs of the depth key, and snug up the top screw, and really clamp down on the bottom screw, like that. So now the knife is really firmly held by the clamp. Put my tools away, and we're not going to be sharpening the back side of this knife at all. At the very end of it we'll deburr it, and it's a very easy process, which I'll show. To do this, I decided to go ahead and use the Naniwa Chosera waterstones that we carry. I figured it's a beautiful Japanese knife, why not use the top of the line Japanese waterstones? So there's also some great benefits to the waterstones in the way that they polish, and they're so gentle that creating that really beautiful seamless curve was really easy to do with the waterstones. Whereas with the diamonds, I would have had more faceting created that I would have then had to blend with a strop. So these really are the perfect tool for this knife, and we carry them in grits from 400 and 600, 800 and 1000, on up to 2000, 3000, 5000 and 10,000. For this video though, I've already done most of the work on this knife as I played with it and learned about it. But for the video, what I'm going to show is just the 10,000 grit stones. So these are water stones. They've been soaking in this little tray for a while. And what I'm going to do is a neat little trick. With water stones, you have to flatten them periodically. And most of the time when you buy water stones, you buy one and you have to flatten it on some other plate, like a DMT, a liner plate. But since with the Wicked Edge you get 2 of everything, you can actually use the stones working together to do 2 things at once. You can build up a nice slurry to work with, and you can also flatten your stones at the same time. So what I'm doing is just rubbing them together, building a nice slurry. You can see how they stick together, and that's just a little vacuum, which tells me they are really nice and flat together. So now I've got one of the stones. I'll just put a couple drops of water on it, and I just start working the edge just like this. And you can see the kind of slurry and the wetness building up. There's a little bit of mess to this process, but it's really not a great amount of mess, and everything really stays confined right here to the wicked edge base that the sharpener is mounted to. So cleanup really is a breeze. It's just wiping it up. And actually with this unit yesterday, I just took the whole thing to the kitchen sink, doused it under water, scrubbed it a little bit, and dried it off, and that works terrifically. So here I am. I'm just doing a nice up and down stroke, keeping continuous contact with the blade all along. And I'm just polishing right now. And I'm really tight at 10 degrees. And then I can just move this out 1 more degree. And I'm working back towards the edge. Again, just further polishing that beautiful tiny curve that goes from 11 degrees all the way up to the 16 degrees at the final edge. And it's a really fun process working with a knife that's this well made with these beautiful water stones, the little slurry that builds on the back of it, and you can get a sense of what the Japanese masters really are experiencing when they're working with those water stones, polishing up all the beautiful cutlery that they make in Japan. Okay, I'm going to move out 1 more degree. And I'm using a very light touch, just kind of up and down. At this point, I'm also wanting to make my scratches as uniform as possible. Even at 10,000 grit, there are tiny little scratches, and that's to be expected. And you just want to brush those together in a nice uniform pattern. At this point, it's really more about aesthetics than function, because this is a bevel portion of the knife that never really sees much contact with whatever it's cutting. And this Nakiri is designed for fruits and vegetables primarily. It's a great chopping knife. And so I just keep stepping out 1 degree at a time. And periodically I'll just put a couple drops of water back on the stone. Until I'm all done. So I've got it back out to the edge. It's a really nice polish. The last thing to do is just deburr the backside of the knife here. So if I lay the stone flat against the spine of the knife and let it contact the edge, I'm at a perfect 0 degrees, and I'm deburring from the bevel I created on the other side. And I'm just doing this really nice and gently. And it's easy to do this while the knife is still in the clamp, which gives me a lot of control so that I don't accidentally rock the stone over and create a tiny little bevel, which I definitely don't want to do. So that's really all there is to it. Then we just clean this guy off. There's quite a bit of slurry or mud built up on it right now. It just takes a little bit of work to get it cleaned off. And pop it out of the clamp, and it's just a beautiful edge on it. We'll see how it does with the sheet of paper here. It should just see the beautiful curves I can cut. That's a great testament to how sharp it really is. And if I just want to do, you know, fast slashing cuts, of course that's really easy. So it's got a beautiful edge on it. I can try and take some photographs. It's a very gradual slope down to the final edge, and this thing is just wicked sharp.